Hello everyone, you're welcome to my channel, Messed Up Mentors. This is Python for all. In today's video, we will look into creating and manipulating SQL databases with Python. But there is a previous video where I talked about introduction to structured query language with Python. The link to that video can be found on the right topmost corner to this video. I encourage you to watch that video if you have not seen it. Now, in today's video, we will continue from where we stopped in our previous video. In that first video, we created a database known as oil and gas. We will continue from there. All we need to do is to learn how to create and manipulate SQL databases with Python. Now, to start with, you have to log in to your my SQL shell. Mind you, in that video, I did mention that I'm using my SQL community server. So to log in, I'll open my terminal and then pass in the command mysql minus u, pass in your username minus p, and then you'll be prompted to enter your password. And once you enter your password, you are in the shell of MySQL. The next thing you can do is that we can check if we have a database already created. So how to do that is to pass in the command show databases, end it with a semicolon, and then it shows you all the database you have in that user server. So here you can see that I have my database oil and gas, which was created during the first video. So I want to use this oil and gas database. But before that, there is something did mention here. You can also log into your SQL shell in using the SSL mode. So all you need to do is to pass in SSL mode equals required. Let's quit this and check out that. So we have my SQL minus u, my username minus p, and then I have double dash SSL mode equals required. If you pass this in, it prompts you for password again, and we are in there. Let's verify here that we're actually in the SSL mode. So all we need to pass in the command show variables like, okay, and then you have the SSL mode in quotation marks with beginning with percentage and closing with percentage symbol. So we say show. You can type in capcase or small letter case. Show variables like, and then I have SSL and end it with a quotation with quotation mark, single or double. Just be consistent. You see, it shows us the SSL variables. You can see it already established. So I'll quit again. I don't want to use SSL mode. I just go back to my server, right? I'm in my server right away. So likewise, I did mention here that you can restart and also check the status of the server. Check the state of your local server using the command systemctl restart mysql to restart the server, ctl systemctl status mysql to check the status of your server. This video is actually curated with Ubuntu 22.04 OS. So all commands you see here are Ubuntu Linux command. The next thing we are going to look at before we start creating our databases and manipulating our databases, we need to look at entity relationship diagram, ERD. Okay. Now, the database I want to create is a database of an international oil and gas company. And so I will have my, ERD. I have a company with company ID, name, location, industry type, and email. I have the primary key here is the company ID. Likewise, I have an R&D project that the company, engages in. Here I have project ID, project name, description, end date, start date, budget, and status. I have employee. All of these have primary key. Here is company ID, primary key is project ID. Likewise, the employee ID is the primary key. Then I also have the client with client ID, name, email, country, and industry type. Customer with customer ID, name, email, country, and industry type. Participant, likewise with participant ID, name, email, country, industry type, and the role. And then finally, I have another table which is collaborates with. And there I have the project ID, company ID, client ID, customer ID, participant ID are all foreign keys. Now, what are the relationships here? First, I have a company that manages R&D projects. So the company can manage multiple R&D projects. What are the attributes? We have company ID, foreign key, project ID, foreign key, and then start and end date, etc. Also, we have employee that work on this project. So an employee can work on multiple R&D projects. Okay, and attributes here are employee ID, which is foreign key, project ID, foreign key, role, hours work. The last one here is collaborates with. So we have a company that would collaborate with some clients, that services some customer, and then you have also have some participants. Okay, collaborating with the company or the client or the customer. So here, the project can involve collaboration with various entities. The attributes here we have project ID is a foreign key, company ID is a foreign key, client ID is a foreign key, customer ID is a foreign key, participant ID is a foreign key, and then we have another attribute contribution. So if you're collaborating with each other, here you have many to many relationship. What contribution, okay, do you have each of these entities making via the collaboration? So, having established our ARD and the relationships, then we can proceed to, to create our tables in the server and then populate the database. So, to do that, first we import pandas, import MySQL connector. From my SQL.connector, import error, also import getPass. For us to interact with our server, we wrote this code in our last video. First of all, we need to create a database connection. So first in the video, we looked at how to create a server connection and also how to create database connection. So we're using that function here. The database connection takes a host name, a username, and a database name, the DB name, and then the password is embedded inside the function so as to encrypt the password and hide it from public exposure. So we have try here. You use a try and except statement so that we can handle tracebacks or errors gracefully. We have connection equals mysql.connector.connect, and then your host is the host name, username, password is equal to the user password, and then the database equals to the database name. You close it and it prints MySQL database name successfully created. And then if there's an error, you should handle that error and also check if you have a connection, okay, that is open, that connection should be closed. And then it returns connection. So what we'll do next is first of all to create a query execution function. So for us, once we connect, we have to be able to query our database. So we create execute query. The next thing we do here is to create our tables. So we create all the tables we have in our ERD with the attributes specified. So first, let's start with the create the component table. In creating our tables, you will be using the SQL commands. I expect that you're already familiar with the SQL command. If not, you should familiarize yourself with them. The command comes with create table and then followed by the table name, okay, and then followed by an open bracket. Outline all the attributes, each separated with a comma. So my attribute is company ID. What are the data type is an integer. I don't want a null value. The primary key is also company ID is also what? A primary key. You can put it this way if you are familiar with the SQL command. It could be left this way, or you can also define the primary key uh, along the line. So next is name. Name is a variable character of length 200. I don't want a null value. What it means is that if you have an empty table, then uh, automatically the default value is null. But I don't want it to be null, so it is just empty. Next, we have location. The location is what variable character length is 200. If you use text, text has unlimited length. But here I want to limit the length of the information I store in these attributes. Next is industry type. Same again, variable character 100, not null. And then email, finally, variable character 60. And then you close the bracket, and remember to end it with what? The semicolon. So you enclose all this command in the triple quotation mark as if you're writing a doc string. Next, create a connection by calling the create DB connection, passing your argument, localhost, username, and the database name. And once you have done that, the next is to call the execute query. But in the execute query, you pass in that connection you have established, and then pass in the table you want to create. And this time is what? Create component table. So if I run this code, it will prompt me for my password to connect to the database. I would enter the password, and it tells me my database has been successfully what now connected to, and the query is successful. Let's verify if actually we have this table created. So to check the created table, I'll go back to my terminal and simply type my SQL use database, and I pass in the database name. So I'll come here and type use, and then I will pass in my database name. Database name is what? Is oil and gas. End it with a semicolon. You are using the database right away. That's why it's a database changed. Then the next thing, show tables. So we also will come here and show. We want to see our tables. Show tables. I'll also end it with a semicolon. You see, we have the company table created in the oil and gas database. That's why what is here. So the next thing we do is to create other tables, right? We have the company table, we have the R&D project table, employee table, client table, customer table, participant table, and the collaborates with table. So let's create all of this table. So I already have them defined here. You walk through it in the video. Create project table, defining all the variables and the variable types. Okay, budget, and that. All of them are placed in triple quotation marks, as if you're writing about doc string in Python. Create employee table, likewise. But I've passed in a command here. Remember when I was creating a company table, I just said create table, and followed by the table name. But here I've passed in a clause, a conditional statement. Create table if not exist. Now, the reason of doing is that if a table already exists and you want to create that table, it throws up an error. But if you pass in this exception, if not exist the table, that error is not thrown up. So if the table exists, it will not be created and you will not get an error. If it does not exist, it simply creates that table. I have project table, run through it. I have employee table. I have client table. I have customer table with all the variables, okay, defined and their variable type. I have participant table. I have collaborates with table. Now, in the collaborates with table, I want to lay emphasis here. You have your company ID, null, project ID, client ID, customer ID, participant ID. After you have defined these attributes, then you need to define or specify the foreign key. So here you start by doing that line after line. Foreign key is project ID. You make a reference to what? Projects and project ID. So you are making reference to a table project, and the table has project ID as its primary key. You do likewise to company ID, client ID, customer ID, participant ID, and then you end with the triple quotation mark. So all of these I will run at once to create this table. So I'll run these, so I have them as variables there. Because I have how many tables to work with? Project table, employee table, client table, customer table, participant table, collaborators table. Doing this one after the other is monotonous. So what we simply need to do is that we can simply, use our knowledge of Python to iterate all through this table. So what I will do is first of all create a connection. I have my connection. Then I'll just put these queries as a list of all of the tables I want to create. So I'll simply use a for loop to say for query in queries execute. So this executes this table one after the other. So if I run this, it will ask me for my password. All the queries are successful. Let's check our table to see what we have. Come here and say show again, show tables. You see all our tables are here. If you want to see the content of each of these tables, all you need to do is to use describe and then you pass in the table name. So describe, let's see the table of clients. You see, you have the full content. It gives you the type, the field, and the variable name and the default value. Now, the next thing we'll do here, we want to see how we can alter values in this table. To alter simply means to delete or to add. So alter participant will pass in this command alter table participant. The table we're interested in, we want to alter the table participant. But there, what we want to do there is to what we want to add an extra column, which is client ID, and pass it as what the type is integer. Let's do this again. Run this, to ask for password. Each time you run any of this connection, it will ask you for a password. See query is what? Is successful. Now let's go and look at the table participants. Let's describe the table participants. Let's see what we have there. You see that in the table participant, we have the client ID created. Okay, I'm just showing you how we can alter field values in these tables. So since I actually don't want client ID in that table, I will come back again and make another command, alter table participant. This time around, I want to drop that column of client ID. You can drop multiple columns by simply separating them with a comma. So drop column, you separate the names of the column that you want to drop with a comma, and then you end it with a semicolon, and after that, a triple quotation mark. Let's run this again to ask for my password, and it says query is what is successful. Let's go back and check again. Our participant describe it. You can see the client ID is gone. So I've added the client ID column, and I've also deleted that column client ID. So now let's move to the major cruise of the day, which is CRUD. That is, create new database tables and records, R, extract data from the database and store data in multiple formats, U, update, which is make changes to existing record in the database, and finally delete, referring to removing records from the database. So we're going to demonstrate this based on the tables we have created and with the example oil and gas. So creating records now. We have already created this table. So let's populate the tables, okay, with values. So I simply populate them with the respective values. That's why you have them itemized here. So you call the command pop company. Of course, always pass it. We're using this triple quotation mark, which is the Python docstring pattern, to be able to write values, across multiple lines. So here, to populate the table, you use the command insert into. If you're familiar with SQL command, that's what you do. Insert into company values. And then go into the next line and put all the values in parentheses. So, and then separate each of them. So for every line, we're going to also, we're inserting five rows into this table. So every of the columns are already defined here. Likewise, we do the same thing to pop project, to project. So insert data into R&D project table. We do likewise same to employee. We also do the same to clients, to customer, to participants, and to collaborate with. I will take this to this end to show you the values we have on that end. Those are the values we have on that end. Now, because I have multiple tables to create, instead of querying them one after the other, I simply put them again as a list. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tables. So I have a list of length 7. And then I just call my DB connection, connect to the database on the server. And then for query inquiries, execute simply does that. Same function, the two functions I've defined earlier are the same function we're going to use. So we'll run this, we have it in our namespace. If I run this to prompt me for my password again to connect, and you see all the queries are successful. Let's check the content of these tables. If you want to check the content of the tables, all we simply need to do is to type select asterisk from you enter table name. Or you can say select and specify the columns you want to see from the table name. Or you can simply do again select asterisk from the table name where column. So you want a specific query, you want to get a specific value, specify the condition. Let's look at the first one. So we say select asterisk. So we're selecting all columns from which table should we take? Let's look at the project table. See, it gives us all the values we have populated with that table. If we go again, let's look at the collaborates with table. Also, it returns the values. You can see the company ID, project ID, client ID, and their various contribution. You can do likewise to say, and then look at company. Let's look at company, the company table. Also, we can see the values for the company table. So I'm using here, I'm querying these tables, passing this command from my terminal on the command here, my SQL shell. We see how we can also do that using the Python code. So now we have populated, in other words, we have created a database, we have, inserted values into them. Now we want to see how we can read values from our existing database. Okay, reading values from the tables in our database. So there we define a function, read query, connection, and query. That's what the input it takes. First of all, you have a cursor connection, and here I pass results to none. In my try and except statement, I can override the none with the actual value result. So here I'll first of all call cursor.execute query, and then the result should be the fetch all the queries, and then should return the result. If there's an error, it should be handled gracefully and return failed to fetch, cannot fetch that query. So I'll run this. Now let's read some records. Let's our first query be Q1, and then I want to select asterisk from company. See, what I did exactly here on this my SQL shell is what I want to do with the Python command. So all I simply need to do put this in triple quotation marks, create the connection, and then the result of company will be stored in results underscore call COY. So next again, I want to look through all those results and print them. So if I run this command to ask for password as usual, again I will enter my password. It returns the full query. Let's look at another query again. I want to query that from participants. I'll do the same thing. Remember, we're always creating a connection and a query, and we're passing that to read query. Run again. It returns the full result of that table. So we can see we have read the table participants. We can format our results into a list. Remember, I saved the first query result as result underscore COI. I saved the second as just result underscore part, which is result for participants. Now, let me call db out equals to here. I use a list comprehension here for results in results. Okay, populates the the list and then assign it to db out. If you run this, it puts in what you already have in that database, what the query we have looked up, it puts it in a list. We can also format the output as list of list. How do we do that? We just call db same command, but here we pass list of result for result in results participants. If we run this, what do we have? returns a list of the queries we have looked up. But this looks a little bit ambiguous, okay, and kind of unreadable. So the best way I would recommend you to do is to format the output into a pandas data frame. So first of all, you can use a dictionary to capture this. But because the pandas data frame understands and can work with the dictionary directly, you just call the data frame on the result. So what do we do is that first of all, we know the attributes. The attributes are the column ID. So I specify this column ID as company ID, company name, location, industry type, and email. And I simply call df pandas.data frame, passing the results, what you want to put into data frame, and then specify the columns to be equal to columns. And here we can print the database. If you run this, what do we have? This is the database neatly formatted. Likewise for participants, result for participants. If we run again, it gives us our database neatly formatted. Now, all of these outputs you have looked up here can likewise be saved to a CSV file. So all you need to do is to do df and call to CSV and then just give it your name, let's say participants records dot csv. So when I rerun this, the result will be saved in a CSV in working directory. So if you don't want to put it in the working directory, you simply specify the folder path and it will be saved in that folder path. So let's run this. Dot to CSV is already saved to the CSV. Let me show you where it is on my system. I'm in notes. We scroll down, you can see the result is here. Participants, you can see it here. The result is here. If I open the CSV file, I'm using an Ubuntu OS, so you have this. If we open the file, that's what we have. We can see it here, participant ID, name ID. I can zoom this so that you can see what we have a little bit zoom. Yep. So we can see it, participant ID. But you see here, it appended a column number. Now we don't want this. We don't want this, and so we should remove that when saving as CSV. How do we remove that? You simply come here and pass index equals false. You don't want the index. Run this command. It's already there. Let's check it up. Open again. It's gonna open. Say true. Yeah, so we see that number, those numbers disappear. So we have participant ID, name, info. So we can export the records we have looked up to CSV and save them as CSV. Here you can export individual table. Likewise, you can export all the tables and save them as CSV by concatenating these tables, okay, and then writing them to pandas data frame. If you want to learn how to concatenate all the tables using panda frame, I have a video on that on pandas data frame. I will also leave the link of that video on the topmost right corner of this video. You can get a link and then you can watch that. The next thing we do is that we can also update record. Remember, we are working on the principle of CRUD. We are looking at to create. We have looked at read, and then we are looking at updates. In the update, I can update values in that table. So how do I update values? I simply call update, and I want to pass in the command update and specify the table you want to update. Here I want to update the table customer. And what do I want to do here? I want to set the industry type. So I want to alter the industry type. You can alter multiple columns. So I want to alter this column industry type, and I change it to drilling exercises. Before I do this, let's see the table customer. So here again, I will say show from, and I'll have customer. So you see what we have as customers. This is the industry type. So I specifically want to change the industry type of this. The industry type is energy. So I want to change it to drilling services. So here I would, where do you want to query where, at what point? Okay, I want to query it at customer ID equals 305. Where is the customer ID here? Customer ID equals 305. You can query any of them. You can query with the customer ID. You can query with the name. You can query with email. You can query with the country. You can query with industry type. Any of these columns or attributes can be used to query the database and then update the record. So again, same thing, connection, execute query. If you run that, you have query is successful, and then let's see what the result that we have. Now it's been changed to what? Drilling services, from energy to drilling services. You can also query by using where customer ID like, and then you pass in the percentage symbol 305 and with a percentage symbol all in quotation marks. This can do all of these. I think if you familiarize yourself with the structured query language commands, you would directly understand what this is referring to. Next, I want to update customer again. This time around, I want to set the name equals to Curry Bell. I want to change the name of the customer where the ID is 305. What's the current name there? The current name is what? Is Green Energy. So I query again. The query is successful. Let's see what were the end results. Query customer has been changed from Green Energy to Curry Bell. Likewise, I want to update participants. This time around, I want to change the email and where the ID is 602. Let's look at the table participants. The table participant, okay, participants, there's no S. That's the table. So I want to query as 602. Look at the name, Innovation Tech, and this is the email I want to change, info@innovationtech.com, Zimbabwe. Let me mention here that all of these records you see that I've used to populate this database are actually not true records. Okay, they are fake records. I generated them using Faker. Okay, there's an library known as Faker in Python that can help you generate fake data, so they are not real data. So I query again, and we'll run this query. What do we have? Run the query. We should get our query database updated. Let's see the record again. Looking at the record, you can see Innovation Tech, the email has been what changed? Email changed from info@innovation.com to info@inno-tech.za. Again, I want to pass in another query. This time around, what I want to do here is that I want to read, query the table, and then the result becomes read query. So I store it in results. If we run this command, it will ask for password. Every time you run it, always ask you for password. And you see the query is returned. You can see the table, the content of that table has been returned. Lastly, we want to look at deleting records from the database. And mind you, when you delete records from your database, it's an irreversible action. So always back up records on your database before doing this. Remember again, in the triple quotation mark, the command from SQL is delete from. So I'll delete from employee where I'll specify an ID. Let's query employee first to see what we have in employee before we delete the record from there. Let's see the existing record. From existing record, what ID are we looking at? We're looking at 5014. 5014 is Bailey Cunningham. Bailey Cunningham. He's a data analyst. Department is energy, and then that's the email. So that's the employee we have on that oil and gas company. So to delete at that point, what do? We call our connection and then pass in the connection and the query to execute query to delete that column. Our query is successful. Let's check what we have. If you look at it, that row has been deleted. We have the full row of all those columns 5014 all deleted from the database. Lastly, we want to look at creating records from lists. This time around, I have a list of records. and I want to create those records from them and load them onto my database, we can achieve this task using the execute many method. Remember when we executed our query, we executed these queries one after the. What if I want to do all of them at once? All I need to do is to execute many, and then I'll define execute multiple query. It takes a connection, it takes SQL server, and then value. So again, cursor is connection. Try in my try and except clause. I'm using this try and except statement to be able to handle error gracefully. So I have cursor dot execute many, passing the SQL value, SQL and the value, and then connection dot commit to store that record in the database. And when it's successful, print is successful. It's an error, just print query error and give me the details of that error. So now the SQL command here will now be insert into company. I want to insert company ID, name, location. These are the attributes of that table, company. Again, we have values being defined in parentheses as percentage x. In Python, this is a way of trying to use this placeholder for strings. But in SQL command, this placeholder actually is used for values and not string. The values I want to, records I want to create, add on to this company, I have them. Okay. But before we do that, let's query company and see what we have in the table company before we populate that table. If we do that, what do we have? We have our tables 1 to 5. We can see what we have in our component table. So right over here, we simply come here and we want to add 6, 7, 8, and all, with all these values in that table. So all we need to do is to keep this in the namespace, call our connection, and then execute multiple query connection, the SQL command, and the values. These are the values. The values are the list of the records that you want to add to the database. If we run this, prompt for our password, and then our query. Oh, our execute multiple query is not defined because I didn't run this. It's not in the namespace. So I'll run this again. Sorry for that error. I'll rerun this. And when I execute again, it is successful. So I'll come here, and what do we have? We see our table populated down to this point. Okay, so again, we can read our table by querying the table from select, from asterisk, from company, connection, read query, and then for results and results, print the result. So if we run this, so this is the result, the records from that table 1 to 5, 6, 7, 8 that we have added. I've demonstrated the simple principle of CRUD, the create, read, the update, and the delete. And also I showed you how you can add list of record to your database. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Please like this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel if you have not done so. And when you subscribe, do not forget to click the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload new videos. I will see you in my next video. Bye.